What is this? Some museum souvenir? Did your grandkid print it for show and tell? One of the guards laughed, waving her weathered ID like it was a joke. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. She simply placed the card on the scanner and waited. They scanned her ID and laughed. They thought it belonged to a ghost, not someone still standing. But when that gold emblem lit up the screen, alarms triggered, doors sealed, and the building fell silent. She never raised her voice, because she didn't have to. The building recognized her. The system obeyed her. They thought she was nobody, until the base treated her like the one person who outranked them all. She didn't walk like someone who needed attention. She didn't need to. Her steps were even, measured, not from weakness, but from control. The hallway lights above flickered once, casting a pale glow across the floor as Nora Bishop crossed the VA campus threshold, with nothing but a worn canvas folder and a silent purpose. 56 years behind her. Civilian now. A navy windbreaker zipped halfway up over a faded t-shirt, black slacks, practical shoes, and a thin gold watch that had ticked through more war zones than most of the people in this building had training hours. Her silver braid, tight, low, unpretentious, rested like a line of discipline between her shoulder blades. There were no medals on her chest, no patches on her sleeves. And yet, she moved like someone who once wore the kind that didn't need to be seen. To the staff walking by, she was just another veteran coming to fill out paperwork. To the guards at the checkpoint, she looked like somebody's grandmother. To Nora, she was exactly where she was meant to be. Her gaze didn't dart around. She didn't fumble with her ID or glance at her phone. Instead, she took note of everything in passing, where the cameras were mounted, how long the automatic door took to shut behind her, which guard's radio clicked twice as she entered. Not paranoia, conditioning, because when you spent your life studying threat profiles, it never really switches off. Her fingers, rough and steady, clutched the folder in her left hand. There were initials faintly smudged on the canvas. A designation from a long time ago, one most databases didn't even recognize anymore. The right hand held her ID, wrapped in a leather wallet so worn it looked soft. But Nora Bishop didn't look fragile. She looked focused. And beneath that focus, something lived. Something that had survived things people like the two guards at the scanner desk couldn't imagine. Flashback. In a room far removed from this one, years ago, another building, another base, Nora sat alone on a cot in an empty barracks. Around her, 6 freshly pressed uniforms lay folded with a precision born of ritual. Her hands, younger but already lined with wear, moved carefully over each crease. Name tapes, patches, each one folded flat. Only one would be worn again. A pause. She sat still, the silence wrapping around her like a weighted blanket. Her thumb grazed the edge of a name tag, Harlow J., and her throat tightened. No one spoke. There was no ceremony, just her, and the weight of what was gone. Back in the present, the elevator dinged as it opened. Nora didn't get in. She took the stairs instead, because some things like honor or loss can't be contained by automation or convenience. She didn't need the building to know her. She didn't need the people inside it to respect her. She only needed one thing, to keep her word. And that word had brought her here. The VA facility had the sterile familiarity of every other government building Nora had ever walked into. A place where time moved strangely, stretched by paperwork, lost in line numbers, and numbed by the soft drone of fluorescent lights. The walls were beige, the air just a few degrees too cold, and the scent of hand sanitizer clung faintly to the plastic chairs and reception counters like an unwanted ghost. A small flat-screen TV mounted in the far corner played muted news highlights. No one was watching. A half-dead potted plant stood beside a pamphlet stand full of titles like Navigating Claims Appeals and Managing PTSD with Dignity. In the middle of all this motionless bureaucracy, the scanner desk buzzed with low energy and lower expectations. Specialist Tom Keller lounged behind the counter with the practiced boredom of a man who thought he had the world figured out. Early 20s, uniform just tidy enough to pass inspection. He leaned back in his chair, boot propped against the desk side rail, twirling a pen between his fingers with the kind of arrogance that comes when you haven't yet been proven wrong in life. Beside him stood Private Mason Lee, fresh-faced and trying not to look as green as he was. His uniform was crisp, his posture too upright, like he'd memorized it. A paper cup of bad coffee trembled slightly in his grip. He was new but eager, the kind of young man who still believed the work he did mattered, even if his days were spent scanning IDs and waving people through double doors. Keller was mid-rant about his weekend plans when the glass doors whispered open with their mechanical sigh. He didn't stop talking. Nora Bishop stepped through the entrance like she belonged to a different decade. No, not decade, frequency. There was nothing dramatic in her walk, nothing loud or theatrical, just a sense of precision. Her steps were measured, unhurried, her eyes moving slowly but with purpose, like someone scanning terrain for elevation shifts and blind spots. Her presence didn't demand attention. It absorbed it. In her left hand, a plain canvas folder, faded and soft at the corners, marked with dull, stamped letters that had once been bold. In her right, a tattered brown leather wallet, thick, square, familiar to a generation that still carried things in pockets instead of clouds. She moved directly to the scanner station and stopped without speaking. Keller barely glanced up. Lee blinked once, straightening out of instinct. ID? Keller muttered, already bored. You here for outpatient or admin? Nora didn't answer. She simply opened the wallet and placed her card on the counter. Keller raised an eyebrow at the sight of it. The thing looked like it belonged in a display case. Worn edges, faded lamination, and a photo that looked like it had been taken before the digital era. He leaned forward, picked it up between two fingers, and chuckled. Whoa, where'd you dig this up? He said, loud enough for Lee to hear. This thing looks like it survived the Cold War. Lee leaned in with curiosity, eyes flicking between the card and the woman in front of him. He meant no disrespect. He just didn't know what he was looking at. Nora's face remained unreadable. No emotion, no annoyance. Just still. Keller turned the card over, laughing. You sure this is even real? Or did your grandson make it for a school project? Lee gave a weak chuckle, then stopped when he realized the woman hadn't moved. She hadn't blinked, hadn't flinched, just waited, like a storm was coming, and like she'd weathered worse. Specialist Tom Keller flipped the ID card in his hand, like it was a playing card at a poker table. He didn't recognize the format, didn't respect the wearer, and definitely didn't realize he was about to lose the hand. Man, he scoffed, holding it up so the fluorescent lights bounced off the scratched lamination. This thing belonged to a ghost? Private Mason Lee, still green enough to laugh when he wasn't sure if he should, chuckled nervously. It does look kinda ancient. Keller grinned. I mean, look at this. There's no expiration, the barcodes are faded, and the photo looks like it was taken before color photography was a thing. He waved it in front of Nora with mock ceremony. You sure you didn't pull this out of a time capsule? Nora didn't blink, didn't raise an eyebrow. She just watched, still as a drawn bowstring. To Keller, her silence was permission. To Lee, it was unsettling. This seriously looks like something from Phase 1 access days. Like back when they still typed clearance codes on typewriters and carried them in metal briefcases, Keller went on. Bet this card's older than I am. Lee leaned in again, more curious now. He wasn't sure if he should be amused or cautious. Something about the way she was standing, the lack of reaction, made it feel like maybe this wasn't just another old vet. But Keller didn't pick up on that. He was on a roll. Hey, he grinned, elbowing his partner. What if this is like Operation Mothball clearance? Like level 0, grandpa level, one of those top secret but only if you still have a pager kinds of deals? Lee gave a weak laugh. Or like Area 51 for librarians? Keller barked out a laugh at that, pleased. Still, the woman didn't move. Not even a twitch of the mouth. Not a flicker of annoyance. Just that quiet, immovable presence. And suddenly, the joke wasn't so funny anymore. Lee cleared his throat and adjusted the collar of his uniform. He looked down at the ID again. There was something strange about it, beyond the age. The image, the numbers, the lack of expiration. It didn't look fake. It looked out of place, like it belonged to a system that wasn't connected to anything anymore. A ghost system, one that existed only in the shadows of the current databases. He held his tongue. Keller didn't. You know, Keller said, spinning back in his chair, I should probably scan this just for laughs. See what the system does with it. Maybe the terminal throws a fit, starts playing Cold War music or something. Still nothing from the woman. Lee glanced at her again. That braid, that watch, that jacket. The folder in her left hand still hadn't shifted, not even slightly. And now he noticed something else. She wasn't just standing still. She was grounded, like a statue rooted in stone. Like she'd done this before. Too many times before. Keller waved the card in the air. Bet it doesn't even register. Maybe we shouldn't. Lee started, then trailed off. He didn't know why. He just felt it. Like something under his skin had shifted. But Keller had already leaned toward the scanner, still chuckling. Hey, if it blows up, we'll say she hacked it with psychic powers. He gave the card one last spin between his fingers, then fed it under the sensor with a dramatic flourish. That was the last laugh anyone made that morning, because that's when things stopped being funny. Keller slid the ID card under the scanner with a smirk still curling his lips. The red light above the terminal flashed once, then again. A soft beep echoed. Brief, unimpressive. See? He said, relaxing in his seat. Didn't even... The screen blinked. Not the usual error box. Not the standard gray overlay with invalid format in polite font. It went black. Just black. For a beat, Keller leaned forward. Lee's mouth parted slightly. Is that... normal? Before Keller could answer, something pulsed on the screen. Faint, golden, circular light. A ring of shifting energy emerged in the center of the monitor like ink spreading in water, slowly forming into a perfect circle. Inside it, a downward-pointing black triangle, smooth, sharp, and rotating slowly. Around the triangle, encrypted characters began to appear. Not Latin, not binary. Some looked vaguely Cyrillic, others like glyphs or inverted Greek. The ring pulsed gently, breathing in light. Then the triangle spun, once, twice, and faster. What is that? Keller asked, no longer amused. I don't know, Lee replied. His voice had changed. It was thinner, strained. The screen emitted a low digital hum, deeper than any tone they'd heard from the system before. It didn't sound like a user error. It sounded like something alive waking up. Suddenly, bold red text flashed beneath the spinning emblem. Flag protocol. Alpha red zone. Initiated identity confirmed. Restricted access. Notify command authority immediately. Then came the sound, ch-kang. Somewhere deep inside the building, a relay locked into place. Sharp, metallic, final. Behind the guards, the double doors to the internal corridor sealed shut with a hiss and a mechanical grind. Red strobes flickered along the base of the walls. Lee took a step back. Keller? But Keller didn't respond. He was staring at the screen like it had grown teeth. The triangle kept spinning. The text changed again. Security lock engaged. Level 5 override detected. Do not attempt manual access from the ceiling. A soft, robotic voice echoed. Command protocol engaged. All terminals locked. Repeat, all terminals locked. Cut to Sublevel 2, Network Operations Room. In a low-lit control room, 3 floors below, Systems Specialist Jerome Baez sat reclined in his chair, halfway through a vending machine burrito, when his console flickered violently. His screens dimmed for half a second, then rebooted on their own. He blinked. Was there a reboot order? No one answered. His supervisor wasn't at her desk. Baez leaned forward, burrito forgotten, watching as a new window opened automatically. Alpha Red Authorization detected terminal ID R1L09 source. Intake desk, East Wing. What the? His fingers flew across the keyboard. He tried to pull up the security footage from the East Wing, but every attempt returned. Feed restricted, override in effect. Baez froze. I didn't even know we had a red protocol. He pulled off his headset, heart thudding now, as the lights in his room flickered once. Then a line of text he'd never seen before scrolled across the mainframe. This is not a drill. Back at the scanner station, Keller was standing now. Not cocky, not confident, just standing. Lee glanced at Nora. still completely motionless. Her arms hadn't moved. Her face was calm, almost serene, as if she had expected this. The triangle on the screen spun faster, then froze mid-rotation. A final line of text flashed. Restricted identity confirmed. Protocol locked. Escort in progress. Do not engage. Then the screen turned black again, and silence fell, heavy and sharp. Nora finally looked up, her eyes meeting Keller's. She said just 4 words. Looks like it worked. The lights didn't flicker. They shifted. Cool fluorescent tones gave way to a pulsing amber hue as warning strobes activated in the corners of the ceiling. A low-frequency alarm began to hum through the floor, deep enough that you didn't just hear it, you felt it in your chest. The scanner let out one final tone. Not a beep, but a warbling chime, foreign and commanding. Then went black completely. The terminal froze mid-boot, locked behind encryption Keller didn't even know existed. From above, the voice came. Protocol Alpha Red is now in effect. All stations, stand by. Authorization routing to command authority. Keller's mouth was open, but no sound came out. Private Lee slowly lowered the ID scanner wand he'd been holding like a shield. In the hallway beyond, the buzz of routine admin chatter began to wither. Staff paused mid-conversation, ears turned upward toward the overhead speaker, their faces shifting from confusion to concern. Then came the clicks, not mechanical, magnetic. The hallway doors, the ones that separated the east wing from the admin block, sealed with a soft metallic thunk. One after another, locks engaged throughout the building. You could hear them in every corridor. Not slamming shut, no panic, just inevitable, calculated, like a long dormant system executing its programming without question. Nora hadn't moved. She remained in place, standing calmly in front of the scanner, arms relaxed at her sides, folder still gripped in her left hand. The red alert glow made her silhouette flicker against the beige wall behind her, like a figure in a war documentary. Lee looked to Keller. Did we trigger something? Keller didn't answer. He was staring at the scanner like it might explode. Just then, the reception room's wall monitor blinked once. The digital map of the facility, usually used for patient flow and emergency evac routes, disappeared. It was replaced by a red interface with black text scrolling in real time. Alpha level identity confirms site access. Restricted or all non-essential personnel remain in place. Courtesy escort initiated. A few feet away, a janitor dropped his mop. No one moved to pick it up. One of the nurses, mid-30s, sharp-eyed, reached for her belt radio and whispered, "Dispatch, confirm? Is this active?" The reply came back cracked and short. "Confirmed. Not a drill. Repeat, not a drill." From far down the hall, heavy boots approached. Not running, not shouting, just walking with purpose. And still, Nora didn't move. She simply turned her head, slowly, toward Keller and Lee. Her expression hadn't changed, but something in her eyes had. A weight, a knowing. She didn't have to say it out loud, but the message was clear. You thought this was your building, but it never was voiceover commentary. They thought they were running the system, but some codes run deeper than any rank, deeper than protocol, deeper than memory. Some identities don't live in databases. They live in fail-safes, waiting to wake. The elevator on the far side of the lobby dinged, but the doors didn't open. Instead, a red locked light glowed across the top. A nurse tried to swipe her badge. Nothing happened. A visitor pulled on the west entrance door. Sealed. Even the vending machines rebooted. In the security office, behind reinforced glass, a senior guard picked up the red phone, the one no one ever used. His hand trembled slightly as he pressed the line. "Command, this is VA Post 7. We've had a red-level identity trigger." "No, sir. Not legacy. No. It's active. It's live." Back at the scanner desk, Keller took a step back. Involuntary. Lee followed. The woman hadn't moved an inch. Then from somewhere inside the terminal, a final phrase appeared in glowing red. "Do not detain. Escort with full courtesy. She is cleared above your chain of command." Lee whispered, barely audible. Who is she? Nora finally spoke. Just 3 words. Calm, certain. I've been verified. The hallway leading into the VA command wing was quiet. Not the kind of quiet born from calm, but the electric stillness that comes after a circuit is overloaded and no one's sure if the system will stabilize or detonate. Then came the sound that broke it. Boots, not hurried, not cautious, purposeful. The stairwell door burst open with a metallic slam, and Colonel Adrian Harlow stepped through like she had never entered a room without owning it first. Mid-50s, tall with a presence so sharp it could cut through bureaucracy without raising her voice. Flight jacket still zipped, bars still shining, her hair pulled back in a no-nonsense knot. Eyes like radar, scanning everyone, everything. No makeup, no medals pinned. She didn't need them. Her posture said enough. The admin staff near the glass-walled conference room froze mid-conversation. Phones stopped ringing. Someone dropped a clipboard. Where is she? Harlow's voice was low, clipped, and carved from command steel. No one answered. She was halfway down the hall before anyone remembered how mouths worked. A junior administrator in khakis and a tie 3 sizes too long hurried to meet her. Colonel Harlow, yes. We were just about to notify. She stopped walking. He nearly collided with her. Spare me the backpedaling, she snapped. I want a visual on who scanned the ID. Now, he blinked. We believe the system glitched. Some sort of outdated legacy file. Outdated? She leaned in slightly. Did your outdated glitch lock down 5 security zones, override 3 terminal hierarchies, and trigger a red zone protocol last used during a nuclear readiness drill? The man swallowed. It may have been a spoofed credential. We're still running. She cut him off with a gesture sharp enough to silence 3 surrounding staffers. This is not a spoof. And that woman in your lobby is not a glitch. She is the last living sentinel of a unit so deep, even I needed level 6 clearance to read the first 3 pages of her file. That shut the hallway down completely. Without another word, Harlow pivoted toward the conference room, threw the doors open, and stepped inside like the storm she carried had just found its target. Nora Bishop was already seated, calm, composed, back straight, as if waiting for this exact meeting. Around her, command staff stood awkwardly, unsure whether to salute, leave, or apologize. Harlow didn't sit. She reached into the interior pocket of her jacket and pulled out a black folder, the kind with red tape along its border, the kind that didn't get printed without someone above 4 stars signing off. She held up one document, simple, 1 page. This, she said, letting it hang in the air, is the final debrief summary of Sentinel Echo. No one in the room spoke. 6 operators on, she continued, hand-selected, deep reconnaissance and contingency level support. Missions so far off record, they don't even have names, just coordinate blocks and satellite timestamps. She looked around the room, then pointed at Keller and Lee, who had somehow been brought upstairs by an MP and now looked like they were trying to dissolve into the wallpaper. 4 of them are confirmed dead, Harlow said flatly. 1 disappeared in 1989 during a blackout op in the Carpathians. And the 6th? She turned her gaze toward Nora. Sitting in your lobby, being laughed at by 2 kids who wouldn't know a ghost protocol if it tattooed itself on their hands. The silence in the room thickened. One of the facility directors finally cleared her throat. Ma'am, with all due respect, that ID wasn't in any of our recognized formats. We had no way of verifying its authenticity. You didn't have access, Harlow corrected, not raising her voice but doubling its weight. There's a difference. She let that settle, then continued. Sentinel Echo was dissolved in 2007. On paper, the surviving member was given a standing courtesy designation. If ever triggered, her ID would bypass all local protocols and send a direct confirmation ping to a secure command node. She tapped the page with her finger. That ping went through 11 minutes ago, and it was answered. All eyes drifted toward Nora, who hadn't moved. Harlow looked at her, softer now. A long pause passed between them. Not awkward, but shared. The silence of people who had survived the same fires and remembered the same names. Then Harlow spoke to the room, slow and final. She doesn't need your clearance. You need hers. She folded the page, tucked it back into her coat, and gave a short nod. We are reactivating her escort. Full courtesy. No exceptions. She turned toward Keller and Lee. You boys just got a lesson they don't teach in basic. Rank can be worn, but respect is carried. And if you're lucky, one day, you'll earn both. No cuffs, no escort, no orders. Just the sound of her own footsteps. Steady, deliberate, echoing across polished linoleum as the building held its breath. Nora Bishop didn't need an armed escort. The building had already moved for her. The scanner terminal remained dark, locked. Even now, no one dared approach it. A red light still blinked faintly from the corner, like a warning beacon left behind to remind the room of what had happened. Down the corridor, two familiar figures stood by the supply closet, Keller and Lee. Gone were the tactical uniforms and the overconfidence. Now they wore gray maintenance coveralls, sleeves rolled, heads slightly bowed, gripping mop handles and pushing cleaning carts as if holding on to something to keep from unraveling. They didn't speak, didn't move, didn't dare. Keller's jaw was tight, his stare fixed on a smudge that didn't exist on the floor tile beneath his boots. The same boots that once kicked the edge of a desk in mockery now stayed frozen in place. Lee stole a glance upward. For a moment, their eyes met. Nora didn't stop. She walked past them with the same calm she carried into the building. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't acknowledge the weight of shame they now carried. Because she didn't need to. The building had already spoken, and in its silence, it had said everything. Some mistakes get you a slap on the wrist. This one taught them what silence cost. They thought they were dealing with paperwork, with protocol, with someone outdated and harmless. What they didn't realize is, silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes silence is the only thing that survives war. She never asked for their respect. She earned it, long before they knew what the word meant. Nora approached the glass doors. They opened without hesitation, not because they were programmed to, but because she had already cleared the building, in a way no badge ever could. The sun was higher now, casting long shadows across the VA parking lot. A hot wind curled around her as she stepped outside, yet she didn't squint, didn't break stride. She didn't look back, because she didn't have to. Behind her, the building returned to its humdrum rhythm, or at least tried to. But the silence she left behind lingered longer than any alarm. It echoed, not in noise, but in memory. The road stretched ahead like it always had. Familiar, unchanging, indifferent. Nora Bishop drove with the windows down, one hand on the wheel, the other resting near the dial of an old radio tuned just slightly off station. Faint static mingled with a quiet country ballad. Something about home, or leaving it behind. She didn't hum along, didn't tap her fingers, didn't smile, but she didn't frown either. The wind ran through her braid like an old friend, tugging gently, whispering through the cab of her truck. It didn't matter where she was going, only that she was no longer where she'd been, and that whatever weight she'd carried into that building, the wind was helping carry it now. Back at the VA, the sun rose higher, casting sharp angles through window blinds and reflecting in muted tones off steel handrails. Inside, people moved differently, softer, slower, more deliberate. They whispered, in break rooms, in the corners of empty hallways, over half-sipped coffee cups. Did you see her? Who was she? Something locked us down for her. But no one had the full story. Nothing was in the logs. The scanner data was encrypted beyond local access. Security feeds were sealed. The alert system reset itself, showing no trace of the red zone activation. Even the badge scan, the very thing that had unraveled the morning, had disappeared from the archives like it had never happened. Officially, she was never there. But unofficially, every pair of boots that heard the alarms would remember. Every pair of eyes that saw her walk through without permission and without apology would remember. Because there are things the system forgets. But people don't. Dignity isn't given. It's not even earned. It's remembered by those who choose not to forget. The radio crackled, fading into clearer signal. Nora kept driving, not away, just forward. The wind took the rest. In today's world, where people are scanned, labeled, and judged in seconds, maybe this story reminds us that true worth doesn't always wear a title or uniform. Nora Bishop wasn't loud. She didn't demand recognition. She simply walked into a building and let the truth reveal itself. And maybe that's the lesson. That real dignity, the kind built over decades in silence, through sacrifice, doesn't need to be shouted. It only needs to be remembered. How many people like Nora do we pass every day? At the grocery store? At the DMV? Sitting quietly in the back row at church? We might see gray hair, a slow step, maybe a weather jacket, but we don't always see the stories, the missions, the years carried on quiet shoulders. And here's the question we want to ask you. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone the world overlooked, but you knew they had lived 1,000 lives in silence? Share that in the comments. Tell us who they were, or maybe who you once were. And if this story made you feel something, if it reminded you of someone or of something you used to believe in, please consider subscribing. Click like. Share this with a friend or family member who still remembers what respect used to feel like. Because we don't just tell stories here, we preserve them. For people like Nora, and maybe for people like you. Thank you for listening.